The snow fell in gentle sheets, veiling the forest in silence. Beneath the pale Siberian moonlight, tall pine trees stood like sentinels, unmoving, eternal. A lone man trudged through the powdery trail, breath fogging before him, his steps crunching faintly over the frozen ground. He was no stranger to isolation, but something about this particular night whispered of change. His name was Mikhail. He had lived alone in a modest wooden cabin deep in the forest for nearly a decade. Life was simple, cold, and silent, just the way he preferred it. Cities had become distant memories, filled with noise and faces he no longer wished to understand. Out here, only the trees listened. Only the wind spoke. Tonight, however, the forest was holding its breath. It started with a sound, not from above or below, but ahead. A faint, stumbling shuffle, the soft whimper of something living. Mikhail paused. He wasn't one to chase strange noises. But curiosity, primal and undeniable, pushed at his instincts. He moved forward, hand brushing the hilt of his small hunting knife, eyes sharp. Near a clearing, half shrouded in the snowdrift and moonlight, he saw her. She was curled beneath a collapsed pine branch, nearly camouflaged by the snow. At first, he thought she was an animal, a large wolf perhaps, injured and seeking shelter. But as he drew closer, the illusion fractured. Her body was human. Mostly. Pale, trembling, and unmistakably feminine. Her legs were bare and slender, with light dustings of silvery fur climbing the outer thighs. Her hands, delicate but claw-tipped, clutched at her chest. A long, snow-dusted tail curled protectively around her. And from beneath tangled, damp strands of silvery hair, two wolf-like ears twitched nervously. She looked up. Her eyes, icy blue and wide with fear, locked onto his. He froze. She didn't speak, just let out a low, vulnerable whimper, like an animal caught in a trap. Mikhail knelt slowly, pulling off his thick winter cloak and holding it out. "Here," he said quietly. "You'll freeze." The creature flinched, then hesitated. Her eyes narrowed in suspicion, but the bitter cold was stronger than pride. She reached out, fingers brushing his hand as she took the cloak. Her skin was freezing to the touch, and her fingers lingered just a second longer than they needed to. Wrapped in his coat, she looked smaller, even shy. She curled tighter into herself, watching him. "Can you speak?" he asked. No answer. Just a slow nod. He glanced around, then offered a hand. "My cabin isn't far. You'll die out here." Her lips parted slightly, as if to respond, but no words came. Instead, she rose unsteadily, leaning into him as he helped her up. The warmth of her body pressed against his arm. She smelled faintly of pine and snow, wild, but strangely familiar. Together, they walked back through the trees. The cabin was small but warm. Mikhail stoked the fire while she sat close, cloak still wrapped tightly around her form. She didn't speak. Only watched him, eyes darting to his every move. He offered her food. She accepted it hesitantly, eating in small, careful bites. Later that night, as the fire burned low and the wind howled outside, she finally spoke. "Thank you," she said softly. Her voice was delicate, almost musical, but lined with something feral, something untamed. She looked down at her hands. "No one's ever been kind." Mikhail nodded. "You don't have to talk about it." "I want to." And so, she told him, bits and pieces. Her name was Lyra. She came from deep in the northern forests, far from even the most remote villages. Her kind lived in shadows, hunted or feared by humans. She'd been alone for a long time. Then, one night, she'd been wounded, by something she didn't see. She ran. She collapsed. And then he found her. As she spoke, her voice grew steadier. She sat a little taller. Her legs stretched toward the fire, and her tail slowly relaxed. He couldn't help but notice the way her cloak slipped now and then, revealing pale curves and soft fur in fleeting glances. She wasn't trying to seduce. She wasn't even aware. But something about her made the cabin feel smaller, warmer. Days passed. She stayed. He fixed her a proper bed in the corner. But some nights, she curled up by the fire instead. Other nights, he'd wake and hear her breathing just a few feet away from his own bed. She liked to be close. "Do you want to leave?" he asked her one morning. Lyra looked at him with a gaze too deep for words. "Do you want me to?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. One evening, as the forest outside groaned with heavy snow, Mikhail sat at the table, carving a small wooden figure. Lyra sat across from him, eyes watching his hands. "What are you making?" she asked. "Not sure yet," he replied. "Maybe you." She blinked, then smiled, just a little. "You'd make me prettier than I am. You're not ugly." She stood then, quietly. Slowly. And walked to his side. Her hand touched his shoulder. Her voice was barely a whisper. "You didn't run away when you saw me. You were cold. You still stayed." He looked up at her, and for the first time, didn't see a creature or a curiosity. Just her. Her soft features, her careful strength, her vulnerability wrapped in fur and shyness. "I like it here," she said. He reached for her hand. She didn't pull away. The snow did not stop for days. Each morning, the outside world was deeper in white, as though the forest was trying to bury itself in silence. But inside the cabin, something new had taken root. Warmth. Not just from the fire, but from presence, from the way two lonely souls began orbiting each other like stars drawn close by gravity they didn't understand. Lyra's wound had healed, though a faint scar ran along her ribs. Mikhail caught glimpses of it when she stretched beside the fire, her thin shirt lifting just enough to reveal pale skin beneath. She was shy, still, but her comfort grew. Her tail would flick playfully at his knee when she passed, or her eyes would linger on him just a second too long. They developed routines. Mikhail cooked. Lyra watched. He taught her how to hold a blade, how to whittle, how to read his books. She was clever, quick to learn, eager to absorb everything she had been denied. Sometimes, she would curl beside him on the bench while he read aloud, head resting lightly against his shoulder, ears twitching with every rise and fall of his voice. But something else began to stir between them. Something more delicate than touch, more dangerous than fire. At night, when she thought he slept, Lyra would sit at the edge of his bed. Just watching. Her fingers would hover near his arm, her eyes drawn to the lines of his face, the strength of his chest rising with each breath. She didn't know what she was doing, only that it made her feel warm in places she didn't have words for. One night, he opened his eyes. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked softly. She froze like a caught deer. I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't." Her eyes flicked down. "I like hearing your heartbeat." He reached out, gently taking her hand. "Then stay." She did. She curled beside him under the heavy blanket, stiff at first. But as his warmth soaked into her body, she softened, pressed closer, her tail curling around his thigh. He said nothing. Neither did she. But the air between them shimmered with something unnamed. The next morning, everything was different. Lyra wore one of his shirts, oversized on her frame, sleeves rolled up clumsily. She moved through the cabin with a quiet confidence, humming softly as she fed the fire or stirred the pot. Her tail swayed behind her in slow, lazy arcs. Mikhail watched her. He had been alone for so long that he forgot what beauty looked like. Not the beauty of skin or shape, but of rhythm, of presence. Of seeing another soul choose to stay. "You're staring," she said, ears twitching playfully. "You look comfortable," he replied. "I am." That night, she slept beside him again. No words, no questions, just bodies drawn together by instinct and unspoken invitation. Her breath tickled his neck. Her leg curled over his. Her hand rested against his chest. She sighed softly. "Do you dream?" "Not often." "I do now," she whispered. "And I don't want to wake up." As winter deepened, so did they. They bathed together. Awkward at first, stealing glances through steam and splashing water. Her skin was soft beneath the fine silver fur on her back and thighs. He was careful, respectful, but she noticed the way his hands lingered just a bit longer each time he helped dry her. The tension was like a bowstring, pulled tighter by each passing day. Then, one morning, she was gone. Mikhail woke to find the bed cold, her scent fading. Panic flared in his chest. He threw on boots and coat, heart hammering as he followed the faint trail of paw prints through the snow. His mind raced. Had she run? Had she been taken? He found her kneeling in the clearing where they first met, head bowed, tail still. The wind howled. She didn't look up when he approached. "I thought, maybe you'd regret taking me in," she said softly. "That maybe I was just some stray to feed and heal, then forget." He stepped closer. "You think I could forget you?" Her voice cracked. "You should. I'm not human. I'm not normal. I get urges, Mikhail. And I'm afraid of them." He took her hand. "Lyra. Look at me." She did. Slowly. "I don't want normal," he said. "I want you." Her lips trembled. And then she kissed him. Not shyly. Not delicately. But with all the hunger she had buried beneath gentle eyes and careful smiles. Her body pressed into his, warm and firm. Her claws dug lightly into his coat. He kissed her back, fiercely, lifting her off the snow and carrying her home. That night, the fire burned long. They didn't speak much. They didn't need to. Every brush of lips, every trailing fingertip said what words never could. She shed her shirt slowly, uncertain, revealing a body sculpted by the wild, soft curves, powerful thighs, silver markings on her hips like tribal paint. Her ears flattened, shy and exposed. But when he undressed too, she moved to him like a flame to dry wood, slow at first, then unstoppable. They explored each other with reverence. His hands traced her waist, the base of her tail, the hollow between her collarbones. Her fingers teased down his back, breath warm against his throat. When they finally joined, it wasn't frantic, it was surrender. She clung to him like she was afraid to vanish. He held her like she was something sacred. Their bodies moved in a rhythm older than speech, built on instinct and trust. Every moan was a vow. Every gasp, a promise. Afterward, she curled against him, purring softly. "You make me feel human," she whispered. He stroked her hair. "You make me feel alive." The days after that were filled with stolen touches, playful games, and lingering stares. Lyra wore nothing but his old shirts now, tail flicking out behind her with pride. Her shyness remained, but now, it lived side by side with boldness. She would sneak up behind him and nip his ear. She would straddle his lap while he read, pretending not to notice the effect she had. She would crawl under his coat when he sat by the fire, nestling into him like a cat seeking warmth. But not all was soft. Some nights, the wild bled through. Her eyes would glow faintly in the dark. Her voice would take on a growl. Her claws would scrape his back, not to harm, but to mark. She wanted to be his, and she wanted him to know it. And he did. He never feared her. She could be gentle or primal, delicate or demanding. She was never cruel, only hungry. And he had more than enough to give. One morning, as spring began to threaten the snow, Lyra stood in the doorway of the cabin, bare legs bathed in sunlight. The snow was melting. The world was waking. "Do you ever want to go back?" she asked. "To the city?" he asked. "To people." He stepped behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "I have people." She smiled. Her tail curled around his leg. But deep in the trees, something watched. Something old. Something wild. The forest never gave gifts freely, and it never forgot what it let go. The sun had begun to reclaim the land. Snow melted in rivulets down the hills, forming clear streams that whispered secrets through the woods. Buds formed on the trees, and the cold gray of winter gave way to muted greens and warm golds. Life returned, but so did the whispers. And the wind carried something new. Lyra felt it before Mikhail did. She would wake in the early morning, sitting silently at the window, ears stiff and alert. Her tail stilled. Her gaze lost its playfulness. Something stirred in the forest, and it was watching. "You hear it too," she said one night, her voice barely above a whisper. Mikhail didn't answer at first. He had been pretending not to notice, not to feel the heaviness in the air. But her words made it real. He nodded. "It's not the trees." Lyra turned to him, eyes glowing faintly in the dark. "The forest knows I've stayed." That day, she disappeared again. Mikhail searched the woods like before, but this time there were no tracks. No scent. Only silence. The forest had swallowed her. He shouted her name until his voice broke, pacing until dusk. When he finally returned to the cabin, she was there. Soaking wet. Kneeling by the fire. Her clothes torn. He rushed to her. "What happened?" She didn't look at him at first. Her body trembled, not from cold, but from something deeper. "I was called," she whispered. "Drawn to the roots. The old places." "By what?" She met his eyes. "By the others." Mikhail sat beside her, drying her hair gently with a towel. "Others like you?" Lyra nodded. "They don't come close to humans. They think I've been claimed." He stilled. "You're not a possession, Lyra." Her lips twitched. "That's not how they see it. When one of us bonds, we belong to that mate." His heart quickened. "Is that what you've done?" She turned fully now, wrapping the blanket tighter around herself. Her eyes searched his. "I didn't mean to," she said. "But I don't want to go back. I don't want anyone else to touch me. Not now. Not after you." Her words sent heat through his chest, and lower. "I don't want to share you either," he admitted. Her tail flicked once, sharply. "You don't have to." That night, there was no gentle lead-in. Lyra crawled onto his bed like a predator, pushing his chest down and straddling his waist, shirt falling open to reveal soft, dusky skin and silver fur curling down her sides. Her lips hovered above his, her breath warm and shallow. "I want to feel you everywhere," she said. "Inside. Around. In my throat. In my heat. In my thoughts." Mikhail growled softly, a sound he didn't know he could make. Lyra smiled, satisfied. She claimed him again, slowly at first, rocking into his body, grinding with aching control. Her claws braced on his shoulders. Her tail curled and twitched with every deep, deliberate movement. And then she bit his neck, not hard, but enough. Enough to mark. When he came undone beneath her, she purred so loudly it shook the air. Her body wrapped around him, legs locking at his sides, as if she'd never let him go. Days passed. They no longer tiptoed around intimacy. Their connection was open now, both gentle and raw. Lyra was affectionate in strange, almost animal ways. She'd nip his thigh while they bathed. Press her nose against his chest to scent him. Run her tongue along his jaw when she thought he wasn't paying attention. And Mikhail, he craved it. He'd catch himself touching her without thinking, stroking the soft fur at the base of her spine, threading fingers through her hair, gripping her thighs when she wrapped around him. He couldn't get enough. But the forest's mood grew heavier. Animals vanished from the area. Birds stopped singing. Lyra grew more restless, more primal. One evening, she sat by the fire on all fours, hips swaying lazily, her shirt slipping halfway down her back. Her eyes were hooded. Her breath low. He watched her from the table. "You're trying to distract me," he said. "I don't need to try," she replied, arching her back. He stood, walked behind her, crouched. His hands slid down her waist to her hips. "I could take you right here," he murmured. She shivered. "I want you to." And he did, slowly, powerfully. Her claws scraped the wooden floor. Her moans echoed against the stone. When they collapsed together, panting, she licked his jaw again and whispered. "They can't take me now. I'm yours." But the others did not give up. One night, as spring thunder cracked over the forest, Mikhail awoke to howling, dozens of them, surrounding the cabin. Lyra was already awake, crouched by the door, eyes glowing. "They want me to come out." Mikhail stood beside her. "Then they'll have to go through me." Her voice was sharp now. "They will hurt you. Let them try." She looked at him, that fierce, trembling creature, and kissed him like it was the last time. "I need to go out there," she said. "Alone." "No. If I don't, they'll destroy everything. Including you." Mikhail clenched his fists. "Lyra." She smiled faintly. "Trust me." Naked beneath the moonlight, Lyra stepped into the clearing. Her tail stood straight, her ears drawn back. Her body was beautiful, glowing with sweat and magic and something darker, something wild. The others emerged from the trees, figures like her, some lean, others hulking, all with eyes that shone like polished ice. They spoke in a tongue older than words. Mikhail watched from the window, heart pounding. Lyra stood tall. Her voice rose like a howl, then broke into human sound. "He is mine." The pack growled. She repeated, louder, "He is mine." One of them, a tall male with dark fur and heavy shoulders, stepped forward, challenging her. But Lyra didn't flinch. She dropped to all fours and lunged, slamming into him with such force that they rolled through the dirt. Fur flew. Claws flashed. Blood hit snow. And she won. When the dust settled, Lyra stood over him, victorious. The others bowed. One by one, they vanished into the trees. She limped back to the cabin, eyes wild, skin scraped. Mikhail met her at the door and swept her into his arms. "I told you I'm yours," she whispered. He kissed her. "And I'm yours." That night, they didn't sleep. They made love like they were claiming a throne. Spring arrived in full bloom, and the forest awoke with color and scent. The snow had vanished. Wildflowers pushed up through damp soil. The cabin, once buried in silence and frost, was now surrounded by birdsong and the buzz of waking life. And within it, Mikhail and Lyra found themselves in a new rhythm. The danger had passed, but something had changed. Lyra's eyes still glowed at night. Her steps had grown even more confident. She hunted now, small game, with clean kills and little waste. She moved through the woods like she was part of it. But she always returned to him. Always. She would leave in the morning, tail flicking as she disappeared into the trees, and return by dusk, muddy, scratched, sometimes blood-stained, but with fire in her eyes. And when she entered the cabin, it wasn't just affection she brought. It was hunger. He became her ritual. A shared meal. A quiet bath. A long stare across the fire. Then she would mount him like instinct demanded, grinding slow circles into his lap until he groaned her name. Some nights she teased him with slow bites and claws. Other nights she begged, whispering in heat-soaked voice. Touch me. Remind me I'm yours. And Mikhail, he learned her rhythms. Her softness. Her wildness. He learned that pressing his fingers to the base of her spine made her whimper. That biting her shoulder sent shivers through her thighs. That wrapping his hand around her throat, gently, made her melt with need. They didn't make love. They devoured each other. But outside, the world had not forgotten them. One morning, Mikhail found tire tracks near the outer edge of the forest trail. Not old, not snow-buried like before, but fresh. He followed them cautiously and found signs of human passage, cigarette butts, crushed beer cans, the remains of a campfire. Someone had been close. Too close. He returned home silently. Didn't tell Lyra right away. But she already knew. That night, she lay beside him under the blanket, curled around him like a purring storm. You saw them, she murmured. How did you? I can smell fear. And metal. And lies. He turned to face her. They haven't come to the cabin. They will. She pressed her forehead to his chest. They always do. The next day, she began to change. Not physically, but in her presence. She moved more deliberately, ears constantly twitching. Her tail stayed low, tight. Her eyes flicked toward the windows, always watching. When she wasn't near Mikhail, she paced. Do you want to leave? He asked her. She shook her head. I can't. I chose you. But if they... I'll kill them. Her voice was raw and low. Not anger. Promise. That night, they didn't sleep. Lyra rode him like it was the last time, like she needed to memorize every twitch, every shudder, every breath he gave her. She whispered things in her own language, her voice broken between cries. He held her tighter than ever before. Marked her skin with his mouth. Let her leave scratches down his back. When they finally collapsed together, she curled into his side, trembling softly. I don't want them to take you away, she whispered. They won't. You don't understand. Her voice cracked. They see me as a thing. A beast. But if they see you with me, they'll make you disappear. I'm not leaving you. She sobbed once, quietly. Then we'll fight. It happened 2 days later. Mikhail was chopping wood outside when he heard the sound of a truck in the distance. Tires on dirt. A rough engine. Then voices, human ones. Male. Sharp. He moved quickly, back to the cabin, to Lyra, who was already crouched by the door. 3 of them, she said. Guns. He grabbed his hunting rifle from above the mantel. I can scare them off. But Lyra shook her head. You don't understand, she said again. They didn't come to ask. They came to take. She opened the back window and slipped into the trees. He barely had time to process before the knock came. 3 men. Dark uniforms. Branded vests. Rangers, maybe, but not government. Too quiet. Too wrong. You Mikhail? The tallest asked. Who's asking? We've had sightings of a large animal in this area. Dangerous. Possibly rabid. You seen anything unusual? Mikhail met his eyes. Nothing. The man smiled coldly. That so? Before Mikhail could answer, the forest exploded. Lyra hit them from the trees like a streak of silver lightning, fangs bared, eyes wild. She tackled one man to the ground, claws flashing. He screamed as blood sprayed across the dirt. The other 2 raised their guns, but Mikhail was already moving. 1 shot. Then another. It was over in seconds. The men lay still. Lyra stood above them, panting, chest heaving. Blood ran down her thighs. Her eyes locked on Mikhail's, feral, yet aching. "You saw me," she whispered. "I always saw you." She fell to her knees. "I didn't want you to see me like this." He knelt beside her, pulling her into his arms. "You protected me." "No," she said. "We protected each other." They buried the bodies. Silent. Efficient. No word spoken. The forest swallowed the evidence. For days, they barely spoke. Lyra grew quiet again. Withdrawn. Mikhail gave her space. But he still left out food, warmed the bathwater, kept the bed ready. One night, she came to him, naked, trembling, wild. "I need you to love me like a monster," she whispered. And he did. He gripped her hair. Pinned her wrists. Drove into her with teeth gritted, breathing hard. She moaned and snarled, wrapping her legs around his waist, clawing his back. She begged for bruises, for bites, for belonging. When it was over, she cried quietly against his chest. "I don't want to be gentle tonight," she said. "I want to feel real." He kissed her forehead. "You are." Weeks passed. They grew stronger together. Their bond, now sealed in blood and shadow, became unshakable. The forest accepted them. The animals returned. The flowers bloomed again. But far away, someone noticed the missing men. Someone began asking questions. And deep in Lyra's mind, something stirred, something ancient. Something tied to her bloodline. Her mother's voice. Her pack's memory. A truth she hadn't yet told him. One night, under a full moon, she took him to a deep glade, an old, forgotten place thick with moss and silence. She knelt at a stone covered in markings, tail curled tight, eyes downcast. "This is where I was born." Mikhail looked around. "It's beautiful. It's sacred." She touched the stone. "And it's where I have to go, to finish the bond." He stepped closer. "What bond?" Lyra looked up. "Ours." He didn't understand. Not yet. But she kissed him, softly, reverently, and whispered. "If you want me forever, you have to take all of me." And then she stepped back, and began to change. The wind stood still as Lyra began to change. Her bare feet dug into the moss. Her back arched. Her hands, once delicate, slender, grew clawed and primal. Silvery fur bloomed across her shoulders, spreading down her spine. Her ears lengthened and twitched. Her jaw trembled with a growl barely contained. But it wasn't violent. It was reverent. The bond she spoke of was not metaphor. It was ritual. Instinct. Magic buried in the bones of the old world. Mikhail stood breathless at the edge of the glade, eyes locked on her. Moonlight poured over her skin, now stretched with ancient markings that glowed faintly along her ribs and thighs. They weren't tattoos. They were symbols older than language, written in her very blood. She turned to him. Her form still hers, still curvaceous, feminine, breathtaking, but elevated. Divine. "You can still leave," she said, voice deeper now, reverberating like it was spoken from within the trees themselves. "I don't want to." She stepped toward him, slow and sure. "To take me fully," she said, "means more than the body. It means joining soul to soul. We will no longer be just man and woman." "Then what?" She stopped inches from his chest. "We'll be bound. Fated. What I feel, you feel. What I hunger for, you'll ache for. If I fall, you fall with me. There is no halfway." Mikhail looked into her eyes, and the answer came not from his mouth, but from his body. He stepped forward and kissed her. The ritual began with breath. Lyra pushed him down gently onto the moss, straddling his waist. Her thighs gripped his hips. Her tail curled around his leg. She ran her hands across his chest, leaving behind glowing streaks of energy like the night sky etched into skin. "You have to give me all of you," she whispered. "You already have it." She lowered herself onto him, slowly, deliberately, her mouth open in a soft, breathy cry. The symbols on her skin flared. Her spine arched back. Mikhail groaned, hands gripping her hips, feeling her warmth wrap around him like fire. It was no longer just physical. His thoughts blurred. His breath synced with hers. He saw her memories, flashes of snowy forests, her mother's lullaby, her first run beneath the moonlight. He saw her loneliness. Her rage. Her longing. She saw his too. His childhood. The death of his brother. The slow crawl of isolation. The nights he stared into the fire and forgot what it meant to be touched. Now, they touched each other with everything. Lyra rocked her hips in a steady rhythm, growling with every motion. Mikhail matched her pace, their bodies wet with sweat, their moans echoing into the forest like a song too primal for words. Their climax came not with a scream, but with silence. Perfect, powerful, blinding. After, they lay tangled in each other, breathing, trembling, changed. "I felt you," she whispered. "Inside me. Deeper than before." "I saw you," he replied. "And I didn't want to look away." She smiled. And for the first time in her life, she looked unafraid. The next day, the world moved differently. Lyra was lighter, almost glowing. She danced barefoot through the cabin, tail swaying, humming strange lullabies that made the walls seem to breathe. Mikhail watched her like a man witnessing sunrise for the first time. They no longer needed words. A glance. A brush of fingertips. That was enough. When she fed him from her own hands, when she licked his wounds clean after a fall, when she curled around his body at night with her cheek against his heart, it was all communion. But not everything stayed gentle. Some nights, her hunger returned, sharp, dominant. She would shove him against a wall, tongue on his throat, claws at his belt. She'd whisper dirty things in his ear with a wicked grin. "Let me take you," she'd growl. "Let me ride you until you beg." He never begged. Not until she made him. But beyond the trees, something stirred. A drone appeared one morning, buzzing high above, whirring like a metal fly. Lyra shot it down with a stone. The next day, there were 2. Then 4. Then none. Which was worse? She sat on the porch one evening, perched like a hunting cat, eyes locked on the horizon. "They're planning something," she said. "Who?" "Humans. The wrong kind. They know you're here. They know we're here." That night, she led Mikhail deep into the forest. Farther than they'd ever gone. To a temple made of stone and root. Hidden beneath earth and vine. "This is the place of the second right," she said. "What happens here?" Her eyes glowed. "We make a final choice." She took his hand. Pressed it to the altar. "You can stay human. Or you can become what I am." Mikhail didn't hesitate. "Then show me how." The transformation wasn't painful, but it was total. Lyra bit him, deep into the curve of his shoulder, and the world exploded. Not in agony. In clarity. He saw the trees breathing. He heard the worms crawling beneath the moss. He felt the pulse of the forest in his chest. And his own body changed, not in shape, but in essence. His senses sharpened. His skin tingled with power. His bones knew things now that his mind hadn't caught up to. He opened his eyes, and she was watching. "Now we're the same," she said. And he knew it was true. They returned to the cabin with new eyes. Everything sharper. Every color richer. Every touch electric. And they made love like gods. They tore the sheets. They scratched the walls. They roared. They laughed. They cried. Mikhail bit her neck this time, gently, then harder. She growled in pleasure. Their bodies locked in a rhythm beyond thought. They were no longer man and beast. They were bound. Then the men came. Black vans. Thermal gear. Gas masks. Night vision. They came with fire and orders. Lyra stood at the front door, naked, teeth bared. Mikhail stood behind her, shirtless, blood humming. "I won't run," she said. "Then we make them regret it." The first flashbang hit the porch. Smoke filled the trees. But it was too late. They had awakened something they didn't understand. Lyra moved like a whisper between the trees, claws out, fangs gleaming. Mikhail followed, stronger, faster, burning with bonfire. Bullets missed. Claws did not. The humans screamed. They ran. Some died. Others were spared, with memories too broken to tell the story. And the forest fell silent again. The cabin survived. Scarred, but whole. So did they. Lyra and Mikhail stood in the doorway, arms around each other, watching the smoke fade into the sky. "They'll keep coming," he said. "Let them." He turned to her. "What now?" She smiled. "Now we live." They rebuilt the cabin, stronger, deeper in the woods. They planted herbs. Made new clothes from hides. Marked their land in runes only they could read. They had become a myth. But they didn't care. Lyra would still curl in his lap by the fire, tail wrapped lazily around his leg, purring as he kissed the curve of her neck. Mikhail would still wake to her tongue tracing his chest, her voice low and wanting. They were wild. They were in love. They were no longer alone.